Welcome to Car Sales Talk 101, where it's all about life in the car business. Telling you like it is. Here's the man with the plan, Terry Cameron. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Car Sales Talk 101. I'm Terry Cameron. Thanks for hanging out again with me this week. You know, I keep wondering how long I can keep doing this. This is episode, I believe, number 177, and I really am worried about how much longer we can keep talking about life in the car business. But every day, every week, when I think I just can't come up with something else interesting enough to talk about, I see it happen on my showroom, and I realize I need to talk about it. So this week's episode is called, I Only Have 30 Minutes. But before we get started on that, I want to remind you to hop on over to Apple Podcast, write me a review, give me a rating. I appreciate it every time you do that. So let's go ahead and get started. Last week, I heard it several times. Now, I didn't necessarily hear this from the customer, but I heard it from the salesperson. They kept coming in and said, hey, they only had 30 minutes. They were here on lunch. They only had a little bit of time. So let me ask you guys, what do you do? Because I reached out to my peers and I asked them what they want to do, what they recommend for a customer that says, I only have 30 minutes. I don't have a whole lot of time. And I've heard it from both sides. I heard some people say, well, you just try to keep on selling. Or the other side of the coin is, well, you just try to reschedule a time when they have a little bit more time, because it's kind of hard to sell a car. It's kind of hard to buy a car in 30 minutes. Heck, it's tough to do that in an hour, sometimes 2 hours. So what do you do? Well, here's what I'd like to recommend. First things first, the customer may not be telling you the truth. They may not like you yet. Once they like you and you start talking to them and getting to know them, they may have a little bit more time than they said. It happens all the time. But if it's true, what do? You only have 30 minutes. They're there for lunch. They don't have a whole lot of time. They got to get back to work. They got to go pick up the kids. They got to do something else other than hang around with you looking at cars. Well, my recommendation is you sell them a car. You just keep on going. If you only have 30 minutes, then let's get 30 minutes worth of quality work, okay? Quality content. Follow the process. Now, I don't mean you skip through it all and say, hey, let's buy the car and go and negotiate and close right away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you start at the beginning. Remember, you still have to greet them the right way if you're going to get anywhere with them. So you do greet them. You build a little bit of rapport with them. You find out what they're there to look for. Because remember, they are there to buy. Customers shop 1.2 dealerships physically before they decide to buy a car. 50% said they bought on the spot when they got what they thought was a good presentation demonstration. But more importantly, at this point, 71% of the customers said they bought the car because they liked their salesperson. So get them to like you. Spend that first 30 minutes as if they're going to be there forever. Start in the beginning. Build that rapport. Ask questions. Find out how they're going to use it. What are their hot buttons? What are their dominant buying motives? Who's going to be the primary driver? And then focus on those things. Pick the car out, and I think what you might want to do is let the customer know at this point, because if you made it to the point to where they like you enough, you can just be straightforward with them. And Mr. or Mrs. Customer, it's really tough for me to do my job in just 30 minutes or an hour. It's really tough for you to be able to buy a car in 30 minutes to an hour. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my best. And I don't mean my best shot at selling you a car, but my best at answering your questions, helping solve your problems, and finding the car that best fits you or your loved one's needs, whatever that might be. Fair enough? If you tell them that right up front, especially when they tell you they don't have a whole lot of time, it sounds to me like you're listening to them and they might care a little bit. And it's so funny when I have a salesperson tells me, hey boss, I'm just grabbing the keys. They don't have a whole lot of time. And then the next thing you know, it's 2.5 hours, 3 hours down the road. They're busting bugs. They're driving a car off the lot. They're really happy. You got paid a commission and you did a good job. You feel really good about yourself. So that 30 minutes that they have, that hour that they have, don't skip steps. Start at the beginning and work your way through. And hopefully, if you do a good enough job, they may want to call ahead and say, hey, boss, I'm going to be a little bit late on buying a car, or I need a little bit more time, or you find out that they're really not telling the truth when they only have 30 minutes to an hour. Now, you don't want to call them out on that, but just watch and see what happens. They may just decide to stay there and buy a car from you. Now, the other side of the coin is, and I think I probably disagree with this, but it's probably a situational thing. You just let them know, hey, when do you have time? When can you come back? Because it's going to take a little bit of time, and I'd like to give you my best. And we can't do it in 30 minutes to an hour. Would you like to reschedule or maybe come in after work? Or we could just do as much as we can right now. And if you're satisfied with what I do, then maybe we could schedule another time. Because if you don't do what you're supposed to do, if they're not satisfied with what you did, how you filled that 30 minutes to an hour time, they're not coming back. They're just not. They have to like you. Remember I said 71% bought because they liked you. 71% that didn't buy said they decided not to buy because of you, even if you had the car they wanted. I mean, I wouldn't buy a car from somebody. I wouldn't spend $5, $10, $20, $30, $40, $50, $100,000 on a car with somebody that I didn't like. I mean, it's a little bit different. I'm going in to grab a six-pack of Miller Lite. I don't care about the person behind the counter. I really don't care about them. I'll give my Miller Lite. Let me get out of there. I don't need a relationship with them. And that's exactly what we're talking about, a relationship. You're trying to build this relationship. So let's go through the steps real quick. You greet that customer the right way. And you know what? It's as long as you're not, how can I help you? If you're not smoking, joking, spitting, cussing, and you get through that initial greeting and they open up to you a little bit, you just start building a little bit of rapport with them. You start asking them those qualifying questions. And I don't mean what's your credit score, or who are you financed with? What are your payments? How long ago did you buy? What happened at the last dealership? Because we don't care about that stuff. We need to do better than the previous guy or the previous girl at the previous lot. We need to be a little bit different. I'm talking about qualifying them as far as what they're going to use the car for. Maybe they haven't made a selection yet, and you can help them make the selection based upon their wants and needs. But in our world today, we have a ton of customers that come in looking at a specific or looking for a specific car. And it's funny how some of them even know the stock number. And at our lot, some of them even know where it's parked because they came after hours. They came while we were closed, or they drove by and they saw it sitting there for 3 or 4 days. Right? So you want to do everything you can to get to that point. And in those 30 minutes to an hour, if that's as far as you can get with them, where they like you, where you found the car that they want, and you answered all their questions, and you were professional, and they really do have to leave and come back, well, when they come back, now you know where to start. You still want to welcome them back. You still want to be as cordial as possible, but they come back. They came back for a reason, to buy the car. And they came back because what happened previously on how well you treated them, they decided to come back to you. Because there's a real good chance that after they left your lot, they went somewhere else. And that salesperson said, hey, when you're ready to buy, when you have some time, come back and see me. I don't have time to waste with you right now. And just let them go. Now, there's another key, a real key to making this successful, and that's the TO. You've got to get your customer to your manager. And don't try to scare your customer by saying, I'm going to go get my manager. It should be more like something like, hey, my manager really likes to meet all of the customers that come to our dealership. So if you can give me just a minute, I'd like to introduce you to him or her, and do that. All that's going to do is help your manager make that follow-up call, that be-back call to try to get them back in. It's also going to help that manager when they decide to sit down and do some negotiations. And believe it or not, there's not a whole lot of negotiations with the customer if they really like you and you found the car that they really wanted. It's going to help with that process. The big bad gorilla is not coming out anymore. It's the guy that they met or the gal that they met earlier that they seem to like. Don't blow off a customer that has just a few minutes before they have to leave. Excuse me. Don't blow them off. Don't blow them off. Treat them like you would want to be treated. If you went into a store and you only had a little bit of time to shop, you asked for some help, and they They were professional. They helped you. They gave as much information to you as they possibly could in that little bit of time that they allotted for you. They have a good chance to come back when you do that. I know I would, and it happens all the time. But more than that, that customer that doesn't have a whole lot of time and they like me, and they found the car they wanted. I answered all their questions. It's funny how they all of a sudden have more time. So don't blow them off just because they said they don't have a lot of time. If they have 30 minutes, give them 30 minutes of the process. If they have an hour, give them an hour of the process. And if you can't get the final part of the process in that time, well, then you finish it when they come back. And they will come back because they let you get that far. You did a good enough job with them. They're satisfied. They'll answer the phone whenever you call them, and they'll come back in. This is a piece of cake, guys. You just got to remember to do it and quit rushing through the process and quit giving up on the customer that has that reflex objection of, hey, I don't have a whole lot of time. It doesn't matter. You're there anyway. You might as well spend it trying to sell cars. All right, guys, you know what I'm going to say next, and that's the sky's the limit. And I'm going to see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please rate it and write a review on Apple Podcast. We appreciate your valuable feedback. You can email Terry at 10minutesalestalk@hot.rr.com. And don't forget to share the show with a friend.